How's it going, everyone? Welcome back. Hopefully everyone is having a lovely day. So the Bengals have a little bit to unpack here. If we remember, obviously rumors, but there was rumors and reports that supposedly the Bengals told Joe Mixon that he was going to have to either take a pay cut or they was going to cut him. Now, those talks came before the NFL draft. We're past the NFL draft. Kind of like with the Jonah Williams situation where it looks like there's a better chance he's going to play tackle for this football team now after some time's passed. Is there a chance the Bengals look back on this draft, look back at what they have and say, I don't think it matters if he takes a pay cut or not. We're going to have to keep this guy. There's a lot of moving pieces here if you're the Bengals. First of all, let's just talk about what's out there. You cut Joe Mixon. You have to be smart about things. And Williams and Evans have proven absolutely nothing in their 3 to 4 years on this team. If there was, proven to be starting worthy backs, at some point in time, they would have seen more playing time. I want to be optimistic as much as anybody else about those guys filling the void and doing all right. But sometimes you have to call a spade a spade. They wouldn't have called in P. Ryan if they felt comfortable that either one of these guys could have just been a backup. I got to remember the injuries and stuff. But I feel like, you know what I mean? If there was a lot of confidence there, that would have never happened. And now we're talking about these guys possibly not being backups, but being starters. And from that reason, I say it's clear that Joe Mixon's their best option, and they need a Joe Mixon. I think you look at the free agents, just say Zeke, Leonard Fournette, down years, both getting older. Not a lot of upside, I would say. They could potentially resurrect their careers, but it's again, you're taking a big risk there. I think if you look at the free agents like that, McKinnon be a nice and an interesting fit. He's obviously not a lead back or a workhorse, more of a third down guy. He's out there. That'd be an interesting one, but again, he's 31 as well, and he wouldn't fill every void the Bengals need. I don't really like the Kareem Hunt idea. I think he's the best available free agent running back out there, but if there's off the field stuff in the past, it's not really something I'm too interested in bringing to the team. Something you want in the locker room, and just looking at the way this guy played, like what do you average? 3.5, 3.8, 3.6. He averaged dang near a yard and a half per carry less than Nick Chubb last season. And that's been consistent, where he's been close to about a yard per carry lower than Nick Chubb. Now, Nick Chubb's an absolute freak of a freaking athlete and a stud. And Nick Chubb's going to outrun just about everybody in his league. But it just, again, it's kind of a comparison thing. The Browns have a great offensive line. You have Nick Chubb, and he's a good full yard below him. You do have to raise some eyebrows and wonder how much is, the Browns offensive line, how much has Kareem Hunt been doing? Is there some age factor coming in there? But there's not a lot of wear and tear on his tires. Nonetheless, I think in this juncture, you again say you'd probably feel better about Mixon. And then there's the Chase Brown talk. Again, I guess if you'd say what's the risk reward there, bringing one of those guys and say for a cheaper contract, and that's the thing we'll get to in a second. But then you bring in Brown, Chase Brown, right? There's I'm gonna be honest. There's gonna come a point in time in this offseason we're gonna call these guys. They're not something about Chase Brown and Charlie Jones. We're gonna say that's right in order to come back and edit this out and change it if it's not. I don't know what it is, but I mix up their last name and their first consistently. So I apologize if and when that happens and we don't catch it. But something about those two. But you bring this guy in and say, hey, he looked pretty solid in college. He looks like a guy that can be your early down back. He can move the pile. He can grind out some yards, and has a role in this offense. He's older. He's got a little bit of mileage on him. But again, the Bengals aren't, I think that's what's important here, is the Bengals aren't looking for a guy for 10 years. They're looking for a guy for a couple. They're looking for a guy for a year, really. Because I don't think Joe Mixon comes back after this season unless, they're willing to fork out some money or he's willing to take a massive pay cut. So it's like, really, you're just playing the 1 year game. And that's what's so important about all these free agents. You're not looking for any of them to be here for a while. You just want a one and done type of contract. See if you can figure things out after that. Because that's all you're really trying to replace is that Joe Mixon salary this season. And that's what's ever so important here, because you want to save money. If you're the Bengals, I think in an ideal world, Jonah Williams talked about being traded. That could have opened up some salary cap, looking less and less likely, but it could still happen. And it was Joe Mixon needing a pay cut or being cut. You needed one of those two salaries off the books or reduced, because in an ideal world, you'd like to throw some money at T. Higgins, or you'd like to throw some money at Joe Burrow this season. You'd like to restructure that contract a little bit so some of that cap hit can be absorbed now, and it's not absorbed as much down the road. Every little bit matters. And I think that's the really big focus here at the Bengals. There's obviously no big free agents they're trying to target. There's nothing like that they're trying to get this season. It's like they could keep these contracts if they wanted to. It's the matter of trying to build for the now in the future, though, and keep themselves in a situation that is a little bit more ideal financially. Which brings us back to Joe Mixon saying, do you cut this guy? Is he worth that 10 million? Instead of taking 10, he could take like 5. Is that 5 million? Is that worth it? Do you look and say, okay, that's fine, whatever, but then you take on all the risk of potentially starting one of these younger guys and taking all the risk of having faith? And again, the fumble issues with the guy that just drafted, you take on all the risk of having absolutely no run game. And that is a risk. It's a risk you don't want to always assume as a team that wants to win a Super Bowl this season. But then again, you watch the Chiefs bring in Pacheco. It looked pretty freaking good last season for this team. So how much faith do you have in your young guys? How much faith do you have in a guy you drafted? That's what the Bengals are asking themselves here. And can you afford to leave Mixon? Because you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot at the same time and say, all right, Mixon's gone. The off-the-field distractions are gone. The lack of production lately is gone. But we're going to bring in a guy that is going to perform a little less than Joe Mixon. That's where things get difficult. I think in an ideal world, again, you can find Mixon a way to shed some cap, drop the salary, whatever. That's great. But otherwise, you look and say, can we pluck 2 of these guys out of free agent that we think can fill the holes? And, again, you look at a guy like McKinnon. Can we get a cheap contract on McKinnon? He can be our third down back. You bring a guy in like a first and second down, grind some yards. Like, can we get a couple guys? They don't need to be stellar. This is a pass-happy league. This is a football team built to pass the football. They don't need to be stellar. Just a little ball security, grind out a couple yards when need be, and that's it. The asking of the running back on this team is not a lot. And then you're good. But I think it's going to be difficult right now for the Bengals to say, all right, we're going to cut Joe Mixon. And I think that's where things get difficult for, the situation. Because I think after the draft, the Bengals will draft a guy in the third or the second. And you say, okay, now there's a little bit of leverage, Joe. Look, we got this guy breathing down your neck. You're going to take this pay cut or you're going to walk out the door. I don't know if it feels like the Bengals have the leverage right now. I think Mixon has the leverage, which makes me believe the pay cut might not happen. It is Mixon's choice, though, at the end of the day. If he wants to help this team for the future and be a part of this football team and try to win a Super Bowl, then he can still take that pay cut that's on him. But from a leverage standpoint, if he feels like, I don't have to take this pay cut, the Bengals will keep me, I think the leverage does still a little bit sway in his direction. I'm definitely... The mindset's shifted, though, with Joe Mixon. Before the draft, I said, yeah, get rid of the guy. Sign a couple cheap guys. And there was some cheaper guys out there they could have scooped up. Save some salary cap. Worry about the future, get the off-the-field distraction off the team. But now you take a step back after the draft and say, do you feel confident enough? And that's the question. Do you feel confident enough about what the Cincinnati Bengals have on this team right now to run the football? And again, what's probably more important, because we've seen them struggle, and this is the reason Mixon's on the chopping block in the first place, how much he struggled on the first and short, the second and shorts, third and shorts, the goal line. So you don't worry as much about, not being able to replace that because it wasn't there. But you worry about the ball security. Joe Mixon did have some great ball security. You worry about bringing in some of these younger guys that can cough the football up and make mistakes, or somebody or coming in that's getting older that may produce a lot less than Mixon just because they're getting older. They might get hurt, whatever. There's a lot of question marks. But I think what's most important is that ball security. You don't want to get a running back where you're running the fumble issues. You don't notice it until it happens, I think. One of those things, they can change the game. Kind of like Lamar fumbling at the 1 yard line, and maybe Hubbard or somebody just throwing a name out there, takes it back to the house for a touchdown. It can change the game that easily. That's how big the ball security is. Nonetheless, love to hear you guys' thoughts. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.